company that gives me the most support in my new career, plus guidance and encouragement along the way. MP Dodge has a unique mentoring program for new agents. It's helped jumpstart my career and has a supportive management team and administrative staff. So if you're contemplating a career in real estate, look no further than MP Dodge. It will be the best decision you make.
This is Bill Mitchner, Executive Director of Lincoln Lighthouse. Did you know Lighthouse provides multiple programs for students such as one-on-one tutoring and mentoring, as well as pro-social skill exercises, while providing them a nourishing meal and a safe space during all months of the year, even during school breaks. Learn more or contribute to Lighthouse at lincolnlighthouse.org today.
Now's the best time to lock in early order savings on a new John Deere planter from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Plan for success with the latest technology, including Exact Emerge high-speed planters that help you cover more acres with greater precision and productivity. Order your planter for next year now to unlock the biggest savings of the season. Contact your local Landmark location today and experience the Landmark difference.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Early break.
I'm not a dog expert. No, it's not. I don't mind dog. I'm not a dog expert, though.
He does talk to chickens, though. It's very endearing.
Talk to another chicken this past week.
Talk to chickens.
What was that? Do it again.
With Steve Sipple, Jake Sorensen, and Bill Bush from 6 to 9 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Load up on meat and more this spring at The Mercado by Certified Piedmontese with great selections of T-bones, tomahawks, ribeyes, filet mignon, brisket, sirloin, and so much more. The Mercado has locations at 84th and Havelock, 30th and Yankee Hill, and now 85th and Old Cheney in Lincoln, where you can have $2 draft beer every Thursday night from 4 to 8 p.m. and half-price espresso drinks on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get to The Mercado today for the best meat in town.
In every office, there's two types of people. There are those who bring in bagels and those who eat the bagels that someone else brought in. Everybody likes the first person. Be that first person. Weekday mornings at 7:30, you have a chance to win a business box of bagels from Bagels & Joe. All you have to do is shut up Sipple. 2 questions for you, 2 for Sip. Win and the bagels are yours. Lose, well, you don't want to lose.
You lost Monday. You lost Wednesday. You're a loser.
Shut up, Sipple. Weekday mornings at 7:30, brought to you by Bagels & Joe. Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Old School, sponsored by the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese. Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman and Austin Orman. Old School with Foreman and Orman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
What up? You heard the commercial. Jay Foreman, Austin Orman, Old School, brought to you the new school way. We are brought to you by the Mercado, Certified Piedmontese, Espresso and Grease, Butcher Shop, 84th and Havelock, 30th Yankee Hill, 85th and Old Cheney / Andermatt, and 168th and Maple up there in the O. A lot going on. AA Ron has found a home. It'll be interesting. We'll dig into more about the the NFL news. Obviously, in this first segment, obviously it's a big segment. The Edmonton Oilers, since we dabbled a little bit in the NHL, they were able to pull it off late in the overtime, a dime by McDavid to get the first victory, which leads to I think 72% chance of, or higher percentage of winning his and Edmonton's first stand of the cup.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
you win game 1 in the NHL, you have a 70+% chance of winning the series.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
cow.
two best teams, and I hope that Edmonton wins, because then it'll be kind of like getting back to, a little bit of rivalry, right? You remember when, the New Jersey Devils and the Colorado Avalanche, so forth and so on. So it's good to see that. You got some baseball news, with the Huskers, a couple guys, I think, jumping in the portal.
7 of them.
Yeah, so I have you. Yeah, I want to ask you about that because I think it's a little bit like Nebraska's football team faced last year, where you showed a lot of growth in baseball. Coaches and staffs are looking for either complementary players or guys that can like plug and play in basketball. They know where Nebraska's at essentially, or where Nebraska baseball is maybe in the pecking order, as far as in the athletic department or whatever you want to call it. So this roster is very appealing to come and try to pluck potentially. And then, just we're 24 hours away from, the first big 7-on-7 tournament held by Blue Blood in their home field tomorrow over there. And it's competitive and it's going to be live on stage. So it's essentially, it goes on all day, and then you'll be able to first 500 get in for free. You get, essentially food and drink to possibly see the future of Nebraska, or some guys that could possibly be a part of the future of Nebraska, on display at 7-on-7 in a competitive environment versus like the camps are kind of like, there's when you have a big camp, unless it's elite camp, there's probably about 10 to maybe 14 guys that are legit, and everybody else is, there's young kids out there trying to get a look and stuff like that. So a lot going on. Plus, like, the football team, I'm assuming is well on their way into summer conditioning. So they're starting to train for a bigger purpose versus, spring ball is kind of I like it. I always say it's a celebration, Hey, look how hard I worked. Look how much we look different. Look at the additions. Look at the freshmen that are coming in.
You talked about the timing in the NFL. It hits June, and you're like, okay, training camp's around the corner. What's the mindset when it hits June for a college football player?
I think it's a little bit slower pace, because they, it's just a different mindset. Even though these guys are, I consider them pros, because they're getting compensated, but it's a little bit different because you just don't, they're still very, immature and experienced, and you can't fault them for it because there's guys that are 18, 19 years old. They don't know what they don't know. And you got versus a guy that's 26, 27, in the NFL. Now I know there's exceptions to the rule. The McCormick down in Miami last year was 27 years old, played in college for like 10 years, but I'm just saying in general, they're very, very young, and it's not too far from spring ball. So they still having a little bit of the spring ball hangover. Plus, they don't have any, well, they do. I'm sure they have like get-togethers and practices, but they don't have, in my opinion, the mandatory mini camps and stuff like that where, there's still moves to be made. I know the portal's always open. You see some, Colorado had a couple, portal gets, today. And so it still is a little bit of transactions. But I think it's for college guys is, I know it's a different environment and the kids are different because, they want to be the cool kids, right? Or you want to go where it's cool. I think it started out with Oregon with the, plethora of uniforms. And then it encouraged everybody else. We had our kind of alternate uniform run there and we'll wear them every once in a while and everybody else does. And so the kids are different, and whatever team adapts more of a clear, truthful, all in on football while still doing the fun stuff is gonna, be 2 or 3 steps ahead towards a championship. And you ask, what does that mean? It means that like when you're doing stuff, like I have to know. If me and you were teammates, I need to know you on a personal level. Right? And that's just me and you kicking it. We could be, if we're of age, having a couple beers. We could be cooking steaks. I could burn a steak, and then, the way you like your steak is different than mine. You know what I mean? Like, How
do you like your steak, by the way?
Medium.
Medium.
And you want to know what? I always thought it needed to be medium well to well done. I didn't know any different. But you know what changed me? Is when Thurman Thomas took me out to eat. Thurman Thomas, Sam Cowart, Sam Rogers. What took me, asked me, and Henry Jones. Don't let me forget about him.
Big Bang Hank?
Big Bang Hank. Big shout out to his daughter, too. She's going to make the Olympics.
Nice.
Yeah. Ran at USC. Is a professional runner, and she is, I just keep getting the social media updates. She's for real. Yeah. And I think he's a scout for the Chargers. I know he was for a long time.
Ooh.
Great dude.
Nice.
He showed me the finer things in life. He did.
Hence the nickname Big Bang.
But it was very like
low key finer things.
Subtle. Like, hey,
Interesting.
this is what you did. This is why you need. Here's what he did. And then also, by the way, I don't know if it's going to be on here, but it'll be on a couple podcasts coming. We're going to start with Frosty Tips.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a Friday thing, so look out for
So the first Frosty tip I got. We're not going to do it this Friday.
it. Okay. We'll do it on Thursday.
We'll save
Okay.
it. The first Frosty tip I got, and the Big Bank didn't have any like gray hair. And if he did it, he was just
Just for men
He
guy.
was a Pro Bowl safety. He taught me that you can have two suits like colors, but you could get 12 different combinations with two main suit colors. And he broke it down. So you could have like obviously black suit, white tie, and all that. Black suit, like a pink shirt, or like a tie and all that. Taught me about it, so he taught me how to make my little money stretch. And he took me and showed me. He was the one that encouraged me to go to Canada to buy the suits in Toronto, because at that time the American dollar was essentially almost $2 for one.
How about that?
Now, what he didn't tell me, that when we went, we Dookie Rayon Hill, Sheldon Jackson, Sean Bryson, Keon Carpenter, a couple other dudes, that was during like Carabana. It was off the chain. We were doing.
Can only imagine.
That was back when we were hanging out with. We hung out with Mike Epps. He had dreads.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. And another
probably
comedian,
shouldn't be
Peters.
surprised by that, but I can see it.
Yeah, another kid, I forget his name, or another comedian named Peters. They were just trying to pedal to get on stage. We were all having a good time.
I do have to ask, going back to your point too. You said you have to know the people in your locker room, get to know you as a person. It's not like you have 51 best friends. But you know each other enough to know generally what makes them tick, and it's obvious if they're not there or they're not working hard.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
Oh, they'll call you out, man. And they'll do it in whether it's a joking way or a direct, or just pull you aside.
Whether it's offense or defense,
doesn't matter.
They see it.
Oh, it don't matter, because we're playing for real. And that's the mindset you should adapt in college, because we're playing for real. Because the better we play, the more we get paid. And even if you're the star quarterback, that means you get paid more. The better I played. So if you get paid and I'm dependable, who you going to bat for?
You.
Me.
Every time.
Right. So this isn't a you thing. This is a we thing. And the one thing about, Buffalo, it was a great, I was a little upset when I, obviously getting drafted a little bit late. And then, obviously I wanted to go to a warm city, but it was the best thing. I don't know if I would have lasted 9 years if I didn't go to Buffalo. It taught me everything I didn't know about everything besides football. Why it's important to be, not only early, not to be on time, but to be early. What's real work like? Even though I felt like we worked extremely hard here at Nebraska, how to work smarter, not harder. How to be efficient with your time, both in season and off season. How to really prepare for a game, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And then it's little things like Henry Jones, heard me talking about golf and how I was thinking about. He's like, "Hey man, you want to just come riding around the cart?" And it was because he had played and been playing, because he'd obviously been in the NFL. But it was 4.5, 5 hours of me and him. I was asking him about the best players he played against, what it was like going to the Super Bowl, how many hours, what does he do in the offseason to work out? Where does he work out? How important is it to be around Buffalo? He broke it down. He said, "Listen, man, I just signed up a really new contract. You need to be here in the offseason. I have family back in Chicago. I got kids starting school. I got to go back to Chicago, and I got to spend more time in the offseason. But this is what I do." Period. John Holisek, same way. I was driving back through Chicago, still to this day, still hit him up.
Mr. Southside.
Right, Southside. I mean, it's those little things, man. And you know what? The biggest, and also a great thing is you learn how to respect people's space. You know what I mean? It's like, I know Marcellus Wiley has been in the news for, good things and bad things and everything else, right? But if you call him up right now, he still makes fun of me because I'm slew-footed. Big Daddy, Pat Williams, he still makes fun, right? Ted Washington does.
Good thing no one else has ever made fun of you for that, right?
But Ted Washington, you would think being a mountain of a man didn't like rule out of fear. Like I always tell the story about the first time I'm about to start. He's like, "You scared?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Yeah, you are." I was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "I was scared the first time I played." He's like, "If I was scared," he's like, "You definitely scared." You know what I'm saying? So that's what you need. That's what the off season is for. This is what June, July, and August is a little different because you're in these guys' case in fall camp getting ready to play down in Kansas City. So the end of July is when they're going to report. But what happens during the first part of fall camp is all set up by what you did after spring. Even though you have some time off, it's still work. There is no time off. There is no off switch. And the sooner that you become one with understanding that it's 24/7, 365, it might not be all day, every day, but you still have to be thinking about football, then you'll be like, you know what? It wasn't so bad when we end up winning 10 games or, whatever.
Pain of discipline versus pain of regret, right?
Yeah. And there's no better example than Ohio State. They had to have some hard talks with themselves, boy. Those things. I mean, just think about that. Being there, number one, the biggest spread in the Ohio State Michigan history, and you had to still walk around campus. You still had to go get gas. You still had to go get groceries. You still had to fill your car up with gas. With gas. You still had to go to class. And then you still had to come and look each other in the face, because as talented as you were, there's a lot of guys that didn't make some simple plays. So in order to come back from that, though, in that 2-week span, on top of wondering if your coach is still going to be around,
right?
And then is Jeremiah Smith going in and they're going to accept the million of offers that he got in the port, all that stuff. I have to know you and respect you and trust you in order to be able to
take the field with you,
to lick
against
our wounds, some bigger than others, and then take the field without the guarantee that we're going to win, because we're not playing Willie Lump State. We're playing a team that was supposed to beat us up again at home.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say on super national TV,
right,
based on the situation.
Right. Supposed to be the marquee game of the first round.
Right. And everybody's watching to see how you react.
They responded.
So you don't get that. You don't get that response by just showing up and just hanging, and not knowing what makes Austin think, what you're doing, or what you're, you have to be so in tune with each other that I got to know your schedule. Are you going back home? What you going to do? And it's not interrogating. It's like, I want to know. Oh, you got you got family coming in town or whatever. Cool. Because a lot, there might be some people that have family that are coming for a family reunion, like at some point in time. You one, you should know that. Number two, you should be interested in it, because that's a big part in your partner's life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like with Farley, we had plenty of times we kick it. You know what I'm saying? He's from Stone Mountain, Georgia. I
thought it was Phoenix City, Alabama.
It just depends on the day. He's from Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Stone
where he's
Mountain,
from.
Georgia.
Yeah. That's where Jerry Blackwell, the wrestler from AWA, is from. Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Really?
I think that's where he said he was from. That's his Austin. It's not on the internet. That's where he said he was introduced from. Big Jerry Blackwell.
According to the internet, he was indeed born in Stone Mountain.
That's where and you know who was born there too?
Terrell Farley, apparently.
So that's how you connect, man. I mean, Dr. Death Phil Ellis, still one of my favorite teammates of all time from Grand Island. He didn't, and you know, it's funny. I hope Phil's listening. He hates that I call him Dr. Death. He's tough as you know what, man. Ruthless. But Aaron Penland, one of my favorite teammates from Jacksonville. That's just it. We've seen Jamel Williams on there, one of my favorite. So you have to be connected, man. This is what you do right now. So this is where it's a little different, because you almost have to work harder to do it in college, because in the pros, you already know that. You could, there's teammates that you played with that you didn't hang out with outside of practice. Now, I always tell the story about Kurt Schultz.
Mm-hmm.
We sat next to each other for 3.5 years. Straight, I'm talking about every single day. I'd look at him. Whether he was sick, I was sick, whatever. It was it was Sean Price, right? And Big Ted Washington was behind me. Sean Price, empty seat, me, empty seat, Kurt Schultz. Because we were in like our facility when I was in Buffalo was like, we had like fourth grade like chairs. You know what I mean?
Mm.
For 3 years. So we communicated. We hung out a lot. We kind of shared notes, and he would give me tips. Especially when I started playing. Like, hey, all right, man, you got to worry. Like this, in this formation now, you cannot let me down, right? But I knew we're professionals. But once with the practice was over, I told you he gave me a ride home that day. He got 2 baby seats in the back.
Right.
Yeah, he got changed diapers.
Yeah.
It's a lot different. Whereas in college, I know there's some kids that have families already and stuff like that. But most likely, you guys are going back to your various residences and you guys are within shouting distance of each other. So I know they do a lot of things together as a team, but as a separate team on your own, you still got to do it. Because at the end of the day, like if you need a ride home, you would like to think you'd be able to call, a few of your teammates.
Right.
And so you got to have a personal like relationship with it. And that's what the team building comes from or part of it. And then you got to be able to display it out there on the field. It's a tricky time. And it's also it's a tricky time because you can't push it. You just got to let it foster in on its own time frame. And there is like levels to it,
I'm sure there's stuff you can do to try to expedite it, but real relationships won't get by with, cheap little like introductory like party games, like get to know you games. You got to be in the trenches with someone to really get to know them most times.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, we're just talking about Henry Jones' daughter, Jasmine, that ran at USC. Mm-hmm. Like I've been hearing about Jasmine since she's been like in like 6th grade when he was living in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And stuff. So, and every once in a while I run into Henry and we'd catch up. So I just think it's one of the things that definitely have to get after it a little bit and see where it goes. And I was looking at the strength of schedule for Nebraska versus the Big Ten teams. It's like, I think we have the 3rd easiest in the Big Ten. Is that what it is?
I don't know what to make of those, but
yeah, because it's all based off last year. And then that's same. And what happens in the off season is
teams are supposed to get better.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you should always prepare that every team has gotten significantly better. But also, I think sometimes, especially in this new age of fans, is because you have so many things that are like accessible. And sometimes players do this. It's like, oh, well, Indiana had an easy schedule, so we're going to go 11-1. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or
let their success become your success.
Or like you get people to say, well, Indiana did it, so we need to do it. That's how coaches, that's how you like get rid of good coaches too early. Mm-hmm. Or like, or it doesn't matter what the sport. It's because you always, instead of taking care of your business or really looking at the facts of what's going on at your place, you're always looking at what they got going on over there.
And it's never healthy.
And it's not apples to apples. And so, the biggest thing that you could do is obviously concentrate on yourself. But, as far as the strength of schedule before we go to break, that could be, a great like motivator, or it could be a deterrent because you could think and you could, and you see this sometimes in the NBA. You saw it maybe a little bit with Husker baseball, but more in the NBA. And we'll talk about, the losses with Husker baseball next segment. But sometimes you could go through the season and wait for the run in the schedule. I remember this like it was yesterday when we were right on the cusp of making a playoffs with Houston. And then you start counting wins and losses.
Instead of playing
and we did it in Buffalo one time. And it was part of when Wade unfortunately was let go. Because we just assumed Indy wouldn't lose 3 in a row because they hadn't. Right. Well, the 3 teams that they were playing were desperate to try to make the playoffs. We're playing for it without like what was just playing without like any, ramifications because they were another team was out of the playoffs. And then number 3 is it was kind of like it was Tennessee, right? So when we were doing it, we kind of lost our way in that game, and then we ended up winning 2 out of the last 3. And if we would have really performed well and we didn't have an ugly loss, we'd have been in the playoffs. So that's also what you can do, is you can almost get punch drunk, and especially with fans, because that's all they can really, and rightfully so, because you got the list coming out today. I heard like Jake Sorensen and Bill Bush, they said they were going over to Barnes & Noble's, got the, it was at Lindy's or whatever.
I think Phil Steele goes to press tomorrow or Saturday.
But the other ones someone was today, a magazine was today, I think.
If it's not Phil Steele, I don't listen.
No, yeah, because he's actually pretty good. But you can kind of get drunk off of that. You know what I'm saying? Because you keep reading, and then you can start lying to yourself. And as a fan, that's all you have, and until you see him on Saturday. But as a player, sometimes you can get a little bit drunk off of the intention. You could really talk yourself into not thinking that your opponent is as good as they possibly could be. And understand this: no matter what your record was last year, and Colorado faced this, when you get off-season hype, you are essentially some sort of, in people's minds, a championship win.
Yeah.
Because when coaches and defensive coordinators and position coaches go for other jobs or to get re-upped in their contract, and you're like, this is what we did on a national stage against, in this case, I'm thinking about Colorado. Or in our case, we have to protect our stuff. Like, okay, well, Nebraska is supposed to be a top 25 team. This is what we did. I mean, look at Cignetti after they beat us. He kept mentioning Nebraska ranked this, Nebraska ranked this, even 3 or 4 weeks later.
When he's had 3 or 4 games since then.
Yeah,
what's he talking about?
Because he was talking about beating Nebraska when they were ranked, and then at that point in time, we had just lost to Ohio State barely. So he was like, well, then we can compete, because I think it was the week of Ohio State game. We have a common opponent, right? So you get it, boy. So that's why the laser focus is so important, and the hoopla. Sometimes you got to turn the noise off,
which is hard to do.
It's almost like getting a teenager off their phone. Ain't gonna happen.
You've never tried to do that.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna take a quick break. Come back. We'll talk a little bit about Husker baseball. What happens after you have win a Big Ten championship? Obviously, go through the regionals, and then you have about 7 guys into the portal. Where look, Husker fans don't need to panic, but then also, is it a blessing and a curse for that last that Big Ten run? Because I imagine if I want you to think about this, if we don't win the Big Ten championship, are those 7 guys as appealing to these other teams? Jay Foreman, Austin Orman, we'll be right back.
You're listening to Old School with Jay Foreman and Austin Orman. Download the mobile app and listen wherever you are on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Load up on meat and more this spring at the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese, with great selections of T-bones, tomahawks, ribeyes, filet mignon, brisket, sirloin, and so much more. The Mercado has locations at 84th and Havelock, 30th and Yankee Hill, and now 85th and Old Cheney in Lincoln, where you can have $2 draft beer every Thursday night from 4 to 8 p.m. and half-price espresso drinks on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get to the Mercado today for the best meat in town.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait. Apply now.
Father's Day is coming soon, and you know what that means. Backyard parties and lots of grilling. You know what's more embarrassing than an overcooked piece of meat? A dirty, disgusting, and grimy grill. Let the pros at Husker Grill Cleaning keep you ready all grilling season. They'll take your grill apart piece by piece, scrub every inch, and reassemble it so your grill can look and perform its best. Visit their website, huskergrillcleaning.com today to schedule your appointment. Husker Grill Cleaning, serving Lincoln, Omaha, Malcolm, and more.
John Henry's has a brand new membership club to protect your entire home in one program. With a VIP and a deluxe option, we will help you find the plan that best fits your needs. Receive discounts on services and equipment, priority service, complimentary inspections, and so much more. Protect your home's plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical systems all in one membership. Call John Henry's to learn more.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air.
And electrical.
Hi, my name is Molly Party. I'm a realtor with MP Dodge Real Estate. I'm a newly licensed agent and considered numerous brokerages before deciding on MP Dodge. I chose the company that gives me the most support in my new career, plus guidance and encouragement along the way. MP Dodge has a unique mentoring program for new agents. It's helped jumpstart my career and has a supportive management team and administrative staff. So if you're contemplating a career in real estate, look no further than MP Dodge. It will be the best decision you make.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
If you're working in your yard, remember never to place landscaping structures and fences too close to above-ground electrical equipment. It's unsafe and could cost you financially. Visit les.com for a complete fence and landscaping installation guide.
Take control of your health with the DASH scan at Advanced Medical Imaging. The DASH scan is a full-body MRI designed for advanced health screening. This dynamic approach provides exceptionally sharp images across multiple organ systems, helping to detect potential concerns early. With minimal radiation and no invasive procedures, the DASH scan offers a safe, comprehensive look at your health. Plus, results are delivered faster than ever, giving both patients and physicians confidence in screening and diagnosis. Your health is too important to wait. Schedule your DASH scan today at Advanced Medical Imaging. Visit amimaging.com or call 402-484-6677 to learn more.
Back to Old School with Foreman and Orman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
What up, we're back. Jay Foreman, Austin Orman, second segment here on a Thursday. I made the, comparison of when Nebraska went, I think we went 5-7, lost to, obviously, a few guys this offseason to the portal to potentially to some other Power 4 programs. For Husker baseball, you're losing, right now you got 7 guys in the portal for various reasons. And I think I remember back when anytime that somebody went in the portal, it's always like, what happened? What did the coaches do?
What's the story? There's got to be something.
And why are they mad? Now it's obviously a ton of more guys going in the portal, but everybody's more understanding that. And I think Fred Hoiberg said it best, I think, last year. He said, listen, we could treat these guys great, give them everything they want. They still go in the portal. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. Now, there is different circumstances and various reasons, but, I think baseball, just like any other sport, when you do well, you're well coached, you recruited well, and maybe your team didn't perform up to the standard or expectations of whatever's been set. That doesn't mean you don't have good players, and that's why you have guys that potentially will go somewhere else. And so instead of being upset at it, you just always got to take the mentality is that whoever's here and whoever wants to be here, I'm going to coach them up like they've been here forever.
When you look at the guys that have transferred for Nebraska, the 3 headliners will be Caden Brumbaugh, Robbie Bolin, and Cale Frost. Brumbaugh, I believe, played all but 1 game. Most of everyone on the team hit over 300. Wouldn't shock me if he's looking to get to the SEC.
Yeah.
And prove that he can play at that level. This is a guy whose final 2 out of high school were Oklahoma State and Nebraska. Went to Oklahoma State, was okay there, was solid enough, was fine. Transferred to Nebraska, missed most of last year with an injury, and then was, for my money, Nebraska's best, most consistent player this year.
Yeah.
And that's just not what you should have been asking of him. I think that if Nebraska was at the level it was in 2021, for example, Caden Brumbaugh is not the best player on the team. He's hitting 7th instead of 3rd. Good player, fine player, solid player. Not a guy you necessarily want to depend on like that. Robbie Bolin, kind of a stop and start year for him, suffered that weird hamstring deal as he was running down that fly ball in the Big Ten tournament. Robbie Bullen was fine his first year up from the JUCO level. I know Nick Sainer was really excited about him, and Bullen was fine. The biggest letdown, though, was probably Cale Frost, who hit over 20 homers last year, 2 years ago now, in the Summit League, was their player of the year up at South Dakota State. Hit a big one against Nebraska here at Haymarket Park. Seemed like a really good get at the time, and then he just never delivered, never came through. I don't have the exact stats in front of me. I think he hit like 6 homers on the year, which is fine, but didn't get that much playing time. Just his approach was all over the place. And that's an impact bat that Nebraska was really banking on, I think, to lock up a job in right field. He just never did it. So I think that, you got Kane Brumbaugh for 2 years, really 1 full season. You're fine with what you got out of him. Good for him wanting to move on. Robbie Bullen, that one probably stings a little bit. Would have liked to see what he can do with his feet wet next year in a full year. And then Cale Frost was just a miss. It didn't click for whatever reason. And then the other guys are a couple catchers in Colin Cymbalista and Cannon Sundgren, JUCO transfers at catcher. You lose Hayden Lewis in the outfield, former Nebraska prep guy out of UTAN. Then a couple freshman pitchers, Aiden Leeser, who didn't pitch, and then Jayshon Unger from Blair, who only pitched 2/3 of an inning. So you lost a lot of your developmental kind of pieces there on the pitching staff. But I don't think any of these losses are necessarily killers. I think having Brumbaugh back next year would have been nice, but you're not guaranteed to upgrade the talent around him. So it would have been in a similar boat. Robbie Bullen, I think, is probably the toughest guy to lose, I would guess. And then maybe if you get another year of Cale Frost and it clicks, but man, after this year, I can understand him wanting a fresh start.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, because you don't know the circumstances, and baseball, I think, is the hardest sport, to play. I mean, you got to be okay with 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of, you could hit the ball well. You could, have a good year at the plate, being disciplined, and things just don't go your way. And sometimes, a change of scenery kind of changes your luck and changes the perception of how you're playing and who you are as a player. So, I think Nebraska or the Big Ten as a whole is in a unique spot. I'm assuming with revenue sharing in the $20.5 million going through, that there's not a lot of baseball teams that are in the top 5 as far as allotment and really being, significant. And so, like there's still great players here in the Big Ten and let alone Nebraska. So you're going to be looked at as a place that we can pluck off good, upcoming, productive players that we know we don't have to, develop and recruit, at the high school level. And so you're taking out the guesswork. And so you're going to see maybe a lot more kids getting shots down at the SEC if you're pretty productive in the Big Ten, because they probably feel like you can go down there and get in their environment and then be just, part of their great teams and be just as productive. And numbers don't have to be matching, apples to apples.
Speaking of those numbers, Tom Chattel talked to him earlier this week, or was that last week? I forget, but within the last week, talking a little bit about this. Writes this in his most recent column. According to NCAA financial reports, Nebraska spent $4.5 million on baseball in 23-24. UCLA spent $4.2 million. UCLA tied for the lead in the regular season, but then lost in a tiebreaker to Oregon to finish second in the conference, and Nebraska finished 8th.
Yeah.
Now, the 4.5 for Nebraska is more, but I would also wager that 4.5 is a much bigger drop in the bucket than it was for USC or UCLA, right? The 4.2 for them would probably be like, Nebraska spending closer to 3, if I had to guess. Something along those lines, 3.5. I don't know exactly. So maybe UCLA invested less, but it's also, more importantly, less of a percentage, I would guess, of their overall, potential operating budget. So it's not like Nebraska's not spending. And that's where I think the 8th place finish is a little disappointing. Nebraska put in more money than most Big Ten schools just to finish 8th. And okay, down years happen, but it's the up and down nature, I think, of things under Coach Bolt. Good year seems like a down year. Maybe they bounce back next year. Maybe they continue the slide. I don't know, whatever it is. But I don't think Nebraska has an investment problem.
No.
I think Nebraska has a return on investment problem, or Nebraska fans have unrealistic expectations. I don't think this is a super regional program anymore. I think, Nebraska should look better than it does in regionals, But I also think it's fair to see over the last decade and a half, Nebraska just hasn't consistently had the horses to win that first game in a 2-3 matchup. And then they're really fighting for their lives with no margin for error.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough because you've had some success, obviously, all the way back to Coach Erstad, and then you keep reverting back to that, and obviously Coach Bolt has had success, and so people quickly look at this is where people don't understand NIL. Just because you pay for something doesn't mean it's the same as what you're getting somewhere else, and sometimes. Maybe you overpay for things, or guys get too fat and happy, essentially off of the, getting paid. And so the perception isn't going to be the reality of how well they play, and let alone how they handled that success, which is in their bank account. And also UCLA has a different factor where you're getting a lot of guys that are willing to stay in California or close to California, maybe for less. And then also they're able to play year round. They're able to do things year round. So they're able to kind of be more ready made, and they're getting in the recruiting guys that are kind of, ready to go, right? Where you're not coming out of, 60 degree or 60 below zero weather. So it is a little different. And that's where the disappointment probably comes, like with any team. It's no different in college basketball with Kansas State. They brought in Hawkins from Illinois, who he had a pretty good run on that team in Illinois. And had a really good role, but he had a really good team around him.
Yeah.
And a set program and identity. And Kansas State came off of that run maybe a year or two before, where they got deep in the NCAA tournament. That's where the expectations came in. Yeah. And no matter what happened, besides beating Kansas once and Hawkins being first or second team all Big 12, it's a waste of time and waste of money. Now, so that's where it's a catch-22, because ideally, I'm assuming if you're not, and everybody gets blinded by Ohio State spending whatever it was, $20 million. Well, it was to bring back all their good players.
Right.
They brought in Quayshawn Junkins from Ole Miss as a running back, and they brought in Caleb Downs, who's going to be a first-round pick at safety. And then
Howard
as well. So that's 3. Everybody else was to get them to return. So that's actually good spending, because those guys.
Well, it's probably the spending that you want in college athletics too.
Exactly. And so that's where you have to, and it's a catch-22, because in order to appease the masses, they want to know how much you spend. That's why when they came out with that, oh, this is what you spent, right? So the fan base wants to know that you're spending money. In reality, if you're not one of those, let's say, modern day blue bloods, the Oregons and stuff that have been spending money out of the wazoo for years, and just say top 12 team, right? Or say top 10, let's do top 14, because you'll throw, Texas Tech in there now, right? You're not a top. So then it's a catch-22. Either do you overspend, maybe like overextend yourself, or do you stay pat and kind of, all right, we're going to mid-level spend and have developmental players. We'll pay the going rate for some special players that we deem as special, and then take a little bit more time. That's probably how you need to do it, because that's what Ohio State was able to do, right? Where you think Sawyer, where he went from his sophomore year as a rotational backup player, junior steady starter, and then they were still questioning whether he could go to the really big level this year, which he did. But the problem is the patience. Right? Remember when Ron said everybody needs to relax?
RELAX.
We don't have a lot of people that are willing to do it. And so that's where, Nebraska baseball is facing that a little bit as well, is that, every year you got to kind of take a step back and kind of look at your spending, how efficient were you what's the, the ROI, how productive was he? Is he really the person that we thought he was or hoped he was? And that's based on how old he is, and as far as, his age, but then also how much he's played, how much he's worked. Is it something that's going to be our new identity? The hardest thing, before I let you go or let you get in on, is, Austin, is coaches now have to reshape their identity almost every year, twice a year.
Yeah.
Or your view, or your vision of a player, because how you might have started your tenure and how NIL and transfer portal rules were here. So this is the type of player. So that's where you see guys kind of get ushered out quicker than you'd like, because things have changed. It's not because you don't like them or you're using them or whatever. It's like, all right, well, we're along this process here. Now we got to try to make a move to get to the next level.
My first point is going to be brief, and it's on the Texas Tech example. They paid $1 million for Najari Kennedy. $1 million straight up.
Yeah.
Worked out for
$1.2
million. Okay,
so got the moving expenses.
Well done. It worked out for them. They're in the Women's College World Series. Is it sustainable? Is Texas Tech softball going to bring in, $1.2 million plus every year to make sure they're able to do that sort of funding? It's going to be really interesting to watch, Jay, moving forward, how much or which schools are willing to dive into those quote unquote non-revenue sports that don't break even.
Yeah.
We want to dominate this lane. We want to dominate this niche. We're going to pour in more money than, 90% of teams in the country so that we're always competitive. Great, cool, good for you. I think you should do that. But how long will that last until they get tired of spending that money and there's no return on investment? Now, I also think schools can be smarter in how they spend their football dollars or their basketball dollars, whatever it is that's their primary driver. But football is an expensive sport. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on monetarily that, yes, Nebraska should have more wiggle room to work with the 70 whatever million it's getting annually just from TV payouts. You should have enough to spread around to make more programs competitive. And I think Nebraska's done a pretty good job of making a lot of programs competitive. Before Nebraska baseball, as much as fans might want them to invest, and I think they probably should, I don't think it's a bad idea. If Nebraska baseball is not going to consistently threaten for super regionals and extra TV credits, you don't get a Big Ten baseball media rights deal.
Yeah.
You're on Big Ten Plus more often than not, with a handful of games on BTN and maybe one or two on, MLB Network or Fox, like Nebraska's had in years past. So you're not getting the TV revenue there. You got to be really cognizant of what you're spending and how it fits into the bigger picture. And then last thing for me from Virginia Pirate, name one northern school that's consistently good in college baseball, please. Oregon State.
They're North Pacific Northwest. They are a powerhouse.
In the Boondocks, powerhouse. They played as an independent this year. They did not go to a conference. They were barnstorming all year long. And they're still hosting not just a regional, but a super regional.
Yeah.
Okay, so little old Oregon State up there in Corvallis. They found the secret sauce. Will Nebraska ever develop into that? No. Maybe Oregon State's the Gonzaga of college basketball, but with a title to show for it. Northeastern, smaller conference. You could throw them out there. Indiana State had a run. We're not saying that Nebraska has to be in super regionals every year. But how many times in the last 15 years have you felt like Nebraska was actually a threat to get there legitimately? Once. One time. And even if you want to bring it closer to home than that, if you're going to say, okay, maybe Nebraska is going to be outgunned on the national level, let's just dominate the Big Ten. They haven't done that. A conference that doesn't spend on baseball, a conference that doesn't care about baseball. I think the conference needs to improve that. But again, why would it? It's not getting the eyeballs. It's not getting the money for baseball. So if Nebraska is spending the amount of money that we're being told it's spending, even if Nebraska is not going to make a whole bunch of noise in the postseason, Nebraska's got to dominate the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Falling to 8th should feel like the sky is falling. It didn't feel like the sky was falling this year. It wasn't great. This team just kind of hung around. Nebraska should be a 40-win program because of how bad the Big Ten is in baseball, how much Nebraska puts toward baseball. There's no reason to settle in that low 30s win rate. You got to be 35 plus every year. And that, to me, is at least a good first step on return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the standard, what you're talking about versus expectations. And that's where it's hard to differentiate, but you have to make sure that you have that standard clear so that expectations doesn't cloud your standards judgment. And instead of I guess being a Debbie Downer, I think this is a good time, even though you won the Big Ten championship at, the tournament, you can say, oh, this is a great time to try to take advantage of everybody in the Big Ten. Okay, you want to come pluck our guys out of, from Nebraska and maybe go to some SEC schools and maybe a lower level, maybe where you should be. And, we have to punt on some of the developmental, projects that we thought we could have, for another year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, then, you know what? Let's start, since we won the Big Ten tournament, let's start calling up some of our Big Ten foes players.
Yeah.
Or, waiting for them to go, or going to the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can really reshape your program and kind of be like Oregon, even though Oregon State, isn't in a conference, but when they were, in a conference, they were pretty dominant. And that's how if you can kind of use the negative and a positive and kind of reshape how you're going to go about things, you can kind of stay steady and then obviously improve faster. That's just my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Coach Bolton, everybody got to plan and this whole revenue sharing and stuff like that really, kind of in some sports really, stymied some progress. And it's unfortunate. And I hate it. And also it's kind of like that this 105 that was out there, a lot of guys jumped in the portal and went places they might not have went normally. You have to be sure that you have people in place that can forecast how long this revenue sharing will last.
Yeah.
Because if you have somebody in there and you trust them or you hear like, okay, this is really only going to be a 4-year thing. Well, then you got to make sure if you really believe in your coach and your staff and your principals that you stay pat. One more question before we go to break real quick. Old Dad 34 says we pretty much asked how good do you think the D-line will be? I think it's they'll be as good as they want to be. You have a lot of guys that have to prove themselves. Like I was talking to Strick, you got to validate it. A lot of guys that you've seen be pretty productive or show potential in small doses. Now you're going to get big doses because Nash and Ty and Jamari and everybody else are gone, whether to the draft or the portal. So I don't think it's a talent thing. I think it's just guys that are got potential and just get comfortable and like I mentioned, they got to gel. They got to learn what it's like to not only play for themselves but for each other. Once they do that, I think their talent will shine, and whoever has the most talent will really stick out and take a leadership role. But we're going to take a leadership role to this break. Jay Foreman, Austin Orman. We'll be right back.
Watch Old School live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Old School with Foreman and Orman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Saturday. Eagle Raceway is open for a full season of dirt track racing action every Saturday night. Don't miss the epic battles on the high banks of Eagle Raceway each Saturday between the Nebraska Septic Sprint Cars, Nebraska Lottery Modifieds, Avid Realty Sport Mods, Valentino's Hobby Stocks, and A1 Iron Stock Cars. Let's go racing. Eagle Raceway, just 10 miles east of Lincoln on O Street. Check out the full schedule at eagleraceway.com.
Now's the best time to lock in early order savings on a new John Deere planter from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Plant for success with the latest technology, including Exact Emerge high-speed planters that help you cover more acres with greater precision and productivity. Order your planter for next year now to unlock the biggest savings of the season. Contact your local Landmark location today and experience the Landmark difference.
Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits is your place in North Lincoln to go for all your needs in wine, spirits, and beer. They also have a large variety of cigars in their walk-in humidor, and they have a top-notch walk-in temperature-controlled high-end wine room. Plus, you can enjoy free samples from their tasting bar. There's only one place to go for all your needs for spirits and cigars. That's Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits on North 27th Street in Lincoln.
Are you buying a home? Westgate Bank understands that you need to make important decisions during your home buying journey. Our local lenders in Lincoln and Omaha make themselves available so you can get the information you need to know. Use our mobile mortgage app to manage your transaction from pre-qualification to closing, no matter where you are. Get the service and convenience you want from a local community bank where our interest is you. Learn more and visit us online at westgate.bank. Westgate Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Country music star Rodney Atkins will be performing at the Icebox on Friday, June 20th. Tickets start at $30 and doors open at 7 p.m. The capacity is only 3,000, so don't wait. Buy your tickets at lincolnstars.com today before it sells out.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Coppell Chevrolet GMC, and they're having the biggest hail sale they've ever had. A huge opportunity is at your front door right now. Some of these cars we're fixing, some we're not, and some it's totally up to you. New Sierra starting at $15,000 off list. New Canyons at $8,500 off list. New body styles on the Acadias, $3,000 off list. You need to hurry as there's going to be a lot of people heading to Louisville. Check us out at CoppellCars.com. Stock numbers G121492, G187747, and G196599.
Back to Old School with Foreman and Orman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Quick segment, Jay Foreman, Austin Orman, before we turn it over to WTF, Strick and Clester, coming at you live, 6 to 7. Austin, I know we talked about it with Strick. Who needs this more? Shea or Halliburton?
Probably Hallie. Probably Hallie. I think if the Pacers win it, it'll validate a lot of the stuff that they did. And the Pacers just feel like that perennial good, not great team. This might be Hallie's only shot to get a ring.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
Yeah.
Unless he goes
everybody's going to level up, right?
I think so. And again, I've been a fan of what Indiana's been doing. It's not that they can't get back here again. We just haven't seen them in this stage for 20-some years.
And they had some breaks.
And they got some breaks.
Yeah.
So you really got to capitalize. I think it would be more devastating in the short term for Oklahoma City to get this far as the clear number one team in the NBA. Really, this whole year. And then even last year, and they were the 1 seed in the West and flamed out. So there we'd have all these offseason discussions about, can Shea really be the guy? What does Oklahoma City have to do? Who do they have to package to go get a second star next to Shea? But I think it's much more likely that OKC gets back here in the next 3 to 5 years.
I agree.
So I think it's more important long-term for Halliburton. I think it's more important short-term for Shea.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. If Shea lost or OKC lost, it'd be catastrophic.
Yeah.
The amount of wins this season, the defensive efficiency, the offensive efficiency. You have the MVP, the team that's grown and matured after losing last year and being the number 1 seed. And then you would have to deal with all the questions again. Nobody thought Indiana would be here. It's kind of like, I said this yesterday, Dan Marino going to the Super Bowl when they played the 49ers. He's probably thinking we're coming back all the time. He never got back.
Never.
So you got to take advantage of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that mindset or the potential outcome mentally, affects how they play in real time. So anyways, another great show on a Thursday. Jay Foreman, Austin Orman, Old School signing off again. Once again, like I said, stay tuned for Clester and my man Eastrick, WTF. We'll holler at you tomorrow.